We are back with church history today. Today we're going to be talking about the age of reason and revival. Now, the age of reason and revival runs from 1648 to 1789. If you want to know why those dates are important, 1648 is when the Westminster Assembly sort of wraps up. So the last vestiges of the Reformation are getting over. 1789 is the date of the French Revolution. Now, why is this important? It is because there is a seed change going on in Christianity during this time. There is a change not only in Christianity, there is a change going on within culture in its entirety because there is this concept of the Enlightenment that is coming about. John Locke, Rousseau, Voltaire, all the rest of them. There are these secular thinkers, the deists rise up, and all these novel and strange schools of thought, they just fill the 17th century and they switch around the way people view things. Because ultimately, even through the Reformation, you have what is known as a pre-modern mindset. Everything in the Bible is believed to be literally true. There's this whole circumstance to where history is God's history. Then all of a sudden you get this push and things start to change. The first impetus of this push, though, wasn't necessarily this dominance of reason that rose up. The first push of this way of thinking starts with the wars of religion. Now, what are the wars of religion? The two big ones in Europe are what are known as the 30 Years' War, which occurred in the Holy Roman Empire. It was mainly fought in Germany, but the 30 Years' War involved the Catholics, the Reformed, and the Lutherans fighting each other, but you also had all the nation states involved, and there were huge chunks of time where the French were fighting with the Protestants because the French were trying to fight the Habsburgs, who controlled Austria, and they controlled Spain, who were funding all their stuff from the silver that was being mined in South America. And then you've got the Swedes that all of a sudden came out of nowhere, rose up under Charles and started fighting. You got Russia coming over, you got the Turks coming up from the south, and the whole process. And the entirety of Europe was wrapped in war, and they blamed these wars on religion. The thing is ultimately it was politics, but it got blamed on religion. And at the same time, you had an actual Satanist king in England, Charles I, who was possibly the worst human being that ever walked the face of the earth, who was trying to suppress everything in England, bring England into an absolutist monarchy. At the same time, you had the Puritans, and they were doing their thing. The Puritans represented the middle class. You've got Charles I representing the upper class. They get into this war between the Roundheads and the Cavaliers. England is on fire. Charles I gets his head cut off. Archbishop Laud gets his head cut off. Then all of a sudden, the Puritans get overrun by Cromwell and all of the heretical Congregationalists and Baptists and so on and so forth. And they end up taking over, and then you get all this mess. And by the time Cromwell dies, the English just want all this crap to stop. So they invite Charles II, who was a son of Charles I, to come back and take the throne. And they want to move away from defining everything by religion. So the people are getting tired of all this fighting. And the upper classes, no matter whether you're Protestant, Catholic, whatever, are blaming the fighting on religion, even though it's actually their own political maneuvering. So the people start to drift away from religion. And in the void that is created, there is a school of thought that rises up that puts reason at the center of everything. And these men ask, who needs God? Because man can make it on its own. Now, there are some movements during this time period that actually come about in response to it. You get the Moravians. You get the first Great Awakening in America with Jonathan Edwards. You get John Wesley and George Whitefield with the Methodists. And they come and they start to try to bring about a return to traditional religion. But you're going to get some problems even with that, and we'll get to that in a second. What eventually ends up settling out is, even though there are still officially state churches, God remains a matter of personal choice. even with the state churches, you've still got to subscribe. You've still got to nod and wink to the bishops and to the consistories and so on and so forth. But ultimately, they get to the point where they're not enforcing a lot of the rules anymore. Christians no longer could appeal to the government to suppress heresy, and heresy ran rampant. Deism arises to this point of supremacy in the intellectual class. And what deism is they believe there is a God, but they believe God is like a watchmaker. And what do I mean when I say that? The deists believe that God made creation. He gave it natural laws. Remember, this is the age of Newton and all of them. They discovered classical mechanics and all these others. They discovered calculus. They discovered all these scientific principles. God made all of creation. He put the laws into creation. He set it in motion. And then God stepped back to watch how creation would develop. So what the church did in response to this is cut a Faustian bargain. And what do I mean by a Faustian bargain? They went for short-term gain that has caused long-term problems. This is the time period where revivalism, pietism, and emotionalism arise in the place of Orthodox Christianity. Now, in the next lecture, we're going to see how that becomes something horrific. But it is in this time period it arises. Now, what is revivalism? Revivalism is where you start to get these revivals, which leads into emotionalism. People aren't trusting Jesus. They're trusting these weird spiritual experiences. And it leads to pietism, which always leads to me and my Bible. But we'll pick up more on that next time. Thank y'all and God bless, and I'll see you if the creeks don't rise.